Hello, everyone. I'd like to start by saying how wonderful it is to be on this beautiful island, your beautiful island of Guernsey. Thank you so much for inviting all of us here to take part in this event. It's fantastic to hear so many fantastic ideas and be part of so many interesting conversations. So thank you so much. So I'd like to start by asking a very simple question. How many creatives do we have in the audience today? Could I have just a few? Well, any are there? Yes? Oh, excellent. There's some. Okay, a few. That's interesting. I'm going to come back to that a little later. So I've been named, labelled, if you like, a creative. By trade, I'm an illustrator, a designer, and a creative director. I'm also the mother of two teenage boys. I've been an educator and an accidental social entrepreneur. And I'm also dyslexic, as you can see. So for many, many years, I believed that my inability to read and write accurately hadn't served me well. In fact, it had caused me endless amounts of embarrassment, shame. I managed to inadvertently insult people and even lose work because of it, or so I believed. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that. So at school, as was the norm, I was expected to stand up in front of my class and read out loud. Now, this was terrifying for me, a bit like right here now. It was something that I dreaded. It was painful, not just for me, but for anyone who had to listen to me at the time, really painful. Anyway, on this particular occasion, it was a geography class. And I stood up, and instead of reading the words public areas, I said pubic areas. Now, at 13, my class of adolescent school friends, of course, thought this was hilarious and, in fact, very memorable. But for me, I was utterly ashamed. I was devastated and embarrassed, so much so that the following year, when I had a choice, I gave up geography in the vain hope that they would forget this particular incident, and also so that I would avoid any further such embarrassments. Years later, I wrote a letter to an old professor of mine. He was, in fact, my boss at the time. He had asked me to be a visiting lecturer on a master's course that he had set up. In large, black, inky text, I creatively scrawled across the envelope, Huge Marshall, instead of Hugh. Now, unfortunately for me, and in fact, Hugh, he was in fact a rather large fellow. And I remember so clearly getting this phone call. He was outraged. I didn't even understand what I'd done wrong. I couldn't work out why he was so upset. But he bellowed down the phone. It wasn't funny. And sadly for me, the following September, I no longer had a contract. Even more recently, I managed to sign what I considered to be a concise and well-crafted email to one of our larger international clients with the words, kind retards. Now, not my finest moment, and also spell check really couldn't save me from that one. The two previous occasions, spell check didn't exist. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you all this is because I want to admit openly here on stage today to being vulnerable. Now, you can only be brave by understanding that you are vulnerable. Freud said, out of your vulnerabilities will come your strengths. Now, if I'd understood that as a young lecturer, I could well have admitted to being vulnerable. I may well also have kept my contract for the following academic year. I didn't. I wasn't brave. I tried to hide my fear. I tried to hide my vulnerability, with my fear. And that was what hadn't served me well. Not my weakness, my fear. I believe that great things happen to brave people. I also believe that creativity can bring about positive social change in our world. Change that we so desperately need. 5 years ago, I accidentally founded what I call a global movement, Creative Conscience. It's been built by a community. Our community simply believe in the vision of a fairer, healthier, more sustainable world. We do this by rewarding and encouraging young creative thinkers to build their projects for positive social change. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, it hasn't been easy. I was very fortunate enough in my job. I'd won awards as an illustrator, as a designer, and as a creative director. It's what I did. I was comfortable there. I was good at it. So this new direction, this sort of new path, I really struggled with. It was terrifying. I was full of fear. I had to be vulnerable again. I lost what I considered to be my dream job because they didn't believe that I could do both of those things. I couldn't play both those parts. I had to face new financial challenges. My future was no longer safe. It was no longer clear. All because we believed in this idea that creativity could bring positive impact to our world. So we don't just believe this. We absolutely know it to be true. And I'd like to tell you about just one project. I'd like to tell you about one very brave young Romanian creative who came to the UK to study. Meet Elena. Look how gorgeous she is. So in 2012, Elena sent us her project. It was a graphic novel. It was about bullying and teenage suicide. It was digitally created, 166 pages, a beautifully illustrated story. It was a story of hope. Now, you may or may not know this, but an estimated 1 million lives will be lost worldwide to suicide this year. On average, that's one every 40 seconds. Suicide rates have gone up by 60% in the last 4.5 decades, and it's particularly tragic when young people needlessly lose their lives because our societies can't help and support them in the way they should. Eleanor sent us her project. She won an award. In fact, she won several awards. She was mentored. She gained a paid internship at a London agency, and her project was published online. In a matter of months, Eleanor's project had received more than 2 million hits. She'd received literally hundreds of emails from young people around the world who told her that her project had saved lives, had helped with self-esteem issues, and had stopped negative behaviours. Now, when I met Eleanor, she told me that before she had built this project, that she was going to give up doing illustration and animation, that she didn't think it was for her, and she couldn't see a future in it. Eleanor has since returned to Romania. Last year, she created yet another beautifully illustrated graphic novel on the subject of dementia and those people who have to live with and around it. Now, what's really interesting for me, and we see it again and again, is that Eleanor's work had come from her own personal experience of being horribly bullied as a young girl. By creating this project, she not only faced her fears, she showed herself to be completely vulnerable. It was utterly brave, and consequently, great things happened, not just to her, but to the wider world. I wish I'd met Eleanor when I was a young designer, because she could have taught me a lot. Yeah, an awful lot. So you might be sitting here thinking, well, that's all very lovely, but I'm not creative. I know we've got a few here. Well, I'm not creative, and none of this relates to me, who I am, or what I do. So I'd like to be brave, and I'd like to challenge you to that way of thinking. I'd like to suggest that we, are all capable of creating positive social change within our environment and within our communities. And in order to illustrate this particular challenge and bring this idea to life, I'd like to ask you 3 very simple questions, and I'd like some audience participation. So my first question to you is, how many of you have ever had an idea? Can you put your hands up, please? Okay, that's very reassuring. Pretty much everyone has had an idea at some point. I believe that anyone that's ever had an idea is a creative. So that makes us all creative, right? Anyone who's ever had an idea is creative. Now, it might be that you weren't rewarded or encouraged for your creative thinking as a young child, or it might have been shut down for you as a possibility when you were younger. But if you think about creativity in terms of ideas, we're all creative. So my second question to you is, how many of you, and I hope you'll put your hands up again, how many of you have something that you love doing? Now, this could be a talent or a skill. It could be anything. Maybe shout some out. Snowboarding, brilliant. Anyone else? Surfing, sailing, brilliant. We're on an island, swimming, running on the beach, hundreds of things, right? Growing, excellent. Gardeners, fantastic. So we've got people who have ideas, creatives. We've got people who like doing stuff. Now I'm going to ask you, how many of you have something that doesn't work for you in your life? A constant complaint, if you like. Now, this could be something huge, or even. This could be something big like global warming, or the fact that there's too much plastic in the world. It's on our beaches, it's in our oceans, it's even in our food chain. Or it could be something smaller, like the fact that our neighbours don't communicate with each other, or people gossip unhelpfully at work. Any hands in the air? Complaints? Yes, lots of complaints. I know that I have. So what happens when you mash these 3 things together? What happens when you have an idea, a passion, and a complaint? Well, that's where we can create positive social change. Look at Eleanor. She had an idea. She took her love of drawing and a complaint, a negative experience, and built a project that not only benefited her, but it benefited the wider world. We see this all the time, actually, with projects that are sent to us. This kind of, it's almost like it's a natural formula. It's where magic happens. We also know that some of the best and most successful businesses are built and are created from a place of passion, a love of something, coupled with an issue or a need. We also get a lot of people talking to us about purpose and meaning, young and old, all kind of looking for it. But quite often it's within us. It's just we can't see what's possible because our fear and our inability to be vulnerable stops us from being great. John Gardner said, meaning is not something that you stumble across like the answer to a riddle or a prize in a treasure hunt. Meaning is something that you build into your life. We can all build a better world. We can all create better systems, positive social change by using what we know and love against what isn't working in our lives, in our businesses, and within our communities. Imagine a world where every single idea that we create, that we design, that we build, that we manufacture, serves humanity and our planet. Imagine that world, a fairer, more just, healthier, sustainable world. And that's possible. And it's possible that we can all do that as individuals and as communities. What could you do in your world? What could you do within your business, within your organisation, within your environment, within your relationships to make that happen? We all have ideas. We're all creative. Fear stops us from being great, and it's completely brilliant to be vulnerable. In fact, you have to be vulnerable in order to be Dave. Thank you so much.